2,000 years ago, beneath the flickering glow of oil lamps and the quiet hum of the Passover feast, a man sat among his closest friends, knowing that before dawn, one of them would betray him. He wasn't just a teacher. He wasn't just a prophet. He was the Word made flesh, the bridge between heaven and earth. And in these final hours, every heartbeat, every tear, every drop of blood would echo across eternity. This is the story of the Passion of Jesus Christ, the last journey of the Son of God, whose sacrifice transformed history and redefined love itself. From the shadows of betrayal, to the agony of the cross, to the silence of the tomb, every moment is filled with mystery, sorrow, and divine purpose. As you watch, remember, this isn't just history. It's a window into the greatest act of love the world has ever known. If you believe that truth is deeper than time, and that the mysteries of faith still speak to us today, then you're in the right place. Subscribe to Echoes of the Fallen, where ancient stories come alive, and every whisper of the past reveals the heartbeat of eternity. Because what began that night in Gethsemane was more than suffering. It was the beginning of redemption. The clock was ticking, heaven was watching, and the final hours had begun. The moon hung low over Jerusalem, a silent witness to a night that would shake heaven and earth. Inside an upper room, the soft glow of oil lamps flickered across weary faces. 12 men gathered around a table, unaware that this meal would be their last together. Jesus looked at them with eyes that saw beyond time, eyes that beheld both love and sorrow. The Passover lamb lay before them, but in truth, he was the lamb being offered. He took the bread, broke it, and said, "Take, eat. This is my body, given for you." Then the cup, crimson like the blood soon to flow. "This is my blood of the new covenant, poured out for many." The room fell silent. A chill passed between them. Judas shifted uneasily, the silver coins heavy upon his heart, though not yet in his hand. He met the master's gaze, and for a fleeting moment, mercy shimmered there. But the darkness had already entered him. After the meal, they walked into the night, past the Kidron Valley to a place called Gethsemane. The air was thick with the scent of olive trees and destiny. There, beneath the stars, Jesus knelt. "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death," he whispered. And as his friends slept, he prayed, alone, "Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." The weight of the world pressed upon him, not the fear of pain, but the burden of sin. Drops of blood fell to the ground like rain. He stood, strengthened yet sorrowful. The hour had come. In the distance, torches approached. The silence of prayer gave way to the clamor of soldiers. Judas led the way, his face pale beneath the torchlight. He greeted his teacher with a kiss, the coldest betrayal in human history. "Friend," Jesus said softly, "do what you came for." The garden erupted in chaos, swords drawn, shouts echoing into the night. Yet Jesus did not resist. He healed the wound of his enemy and surrendered himself to the mob. The disciples fled into the shadows, and the Lamb was led away. The night of betrayal had begun, and with it, the dawn of redemption. The sound of clanking armor echoed through the olive grove. Torches flickered against ancient stone, casting long, trembling shadows across the trees. The peaceful garden that once held whispered prayers now burned with the noise of betrayal. A crowd of soldiers surrounded Jesus, their faces lit by firelight, their eyes cold with duty. Judas stood before them, the price of his soul jingling in his purse. He had sold the Prince of Peace for 30 pieces of silver, the cost of a slave. "Whom do you seek?" Jesus asked, his voice steady, calm. "Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. And he said, "I am he." At those words, "I am he," the soldiers drew back and fell to the ground, as if struck by an unseen power. The same voice that once spoke creation into being now stood silent before its own creation, ready to be bound by it. Peter, driven by loyalty and fear, drew his sword and struck. But Jesus turned, his eyes filled not with anger, but sorrow. Put your sword away. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me? He healed the wounded man, the servant of his enemies, even as his own hands would soon be pierced. The soldiers rose, bound him with ropes, and led him away through the darkness. The disciples scattered, some hiding, some following from afar, their courage fading into the night. In the distance, Jerusalem shimmered beneath the moonlight, unaware that its true king was being led in chains. Through narrow streets and shadowed corridors they dragged him, from one courtyard to another, from mockery to judgment. The Lamb who healed the blind was struck in the face. The voice that calmed the storm was silenced by accusations. The hands that lifted the dead were tied with rope. And yet, not once did he resist. Every step was chosen, every wound accepted. The Son of Man was walking into prophecy, the path written long before the world began. As dawn approached, the echoes of that night would linger, a world in motion toward the cross, and heaven holding its breath. The midnight arrest was not defeat, it was destiny unfolding in the stillness of the night. The city still slept, wrapped in the quiet hours before dawn, but in the torchlit chambers of Jerusalem, justice itself was being betrayed. They dragged Jesus through the night to the house of Caiaphas, the high priest. The council had already gathered, their robes glimmering in the lamplight. The air was thick with accusation, whispers, and fear. The trial had begun, but the verdict was already decided. Witnesses stepped forward, their voices trembling with lies. "He said he would destroy the temple," one shouted. Another cried, "He claims to be the Son of God." But their stories clashed, their words twisting upon themselves like serpents. Still, the sentence was inevitable. Jesus stood silent. No defense, no anger, no fear, only the quiet authority of truth. Caiaphas, enraged by that silence, tore his garments and demanded, "Tell us plainly, are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed?" And Jesus answered, "I am. And you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power, coming with the clouds of heaven." The room exploded in fury. The high priest shouted, "Blasphemy!" Guards struck him, blindfolded him, spat upon him. Each blow echoed through eternity, the innocent suffering for the guilty. As dawn broke, they led him to Pilate, the Roman governor. The Jews could condemn, but only Rome could kill. Pilate looked at him, searching for guilt, but finding only peace. "Are you the king of the Jews?" he asked. "You say so," Jesus replied. The crowd outside began to grow, voices stirred by envy and fear. Pilate offered a choice: Jesus or Barabbas, the murderer. "Whom shall I release to you?" he cried. And the answer thundered through history: Barabbas! Crucify Jesus! Pilate washed his hands before them, pretending innocence. "I am innocent of this man's blood," he said, but no water could cleanse that guilt. The soldiers led Jesus away, stripped, mocked, crowned with thorns. The King of Glory stood robed in humiliation. Yet the heavens called him victorious. Every judgment spoken that morning was the fulfillment of prophecy. Every wound, every insult, every silence, chosen for love. The trial of innocence had ended, and the path to Calvary had begun. The sky was pale with the first light of morning, but for him the world had already grown dark. The soldiers led Jesus from the courtyard, his body broken from the scourging. The whip had torn his back open, each lash carving the price of humanity's sin into his flesh. Blood mingled with dust, dripping down the stones of the city that had once hailed him as king. They dressed him in a faded robe of mockery and pressed a crown of thorns upon his head. The cruel points pierced deep, and as the blood flowed, the soldiers laughed. They bowed before him, spitting the words, "Hail, King of the Jews!" But the one they mocked was the very one who had shaped the world they stood upon. Then came the cross. Heavy, splintered, brutal. They laid it on his shoulders, and the weight of the world rested upon his back. The narrow streets of Jerusalem echoed with the sound of footsteps, jeers, and weeping. Some shouted curses, some turned away, but a few followed, tears streaming down their faces, and among them was his mother. Mary's eyes met his for a single eternal moment. No words passed between them, only pain, and the silent understanding of a promise now fulfilled. He stumbled once, then again, the cross too heavy, the wounds too deep. A Roman soldier seized a man from the crowd, Simon of Cyrene. "Carry the cross," he barked, and Simon, trembling, lifted the burden of the Savior. That day, the weight of redemption was shared by human hands. Women along the road wept aloud. Turning to them, Jesus said softly, "Do not weep for me, but for your children." Even in agony, his heart beat for others. Outside the city gates, the hill of execution waited, Golgotha, the place of the skull. There, the crowd gathered like vultures around a dying world. Each step drew him closer, each breath a miracle of endurance. He had healed the sick, raised the dead, calmed the storms. But now he walked the hardest road of all, the path of obedience, the road of love that would lead to death itself. The journey to Calvary was not just a walk to the cross. It was the march of eternity toward its moment of victory. The hill was silent except for the hammer. The sound of metal striking metal echoed through the morning air, each blow driving history toward its turning point. They laid him on the wooden beams, arms outstretched, the creator of life now bound by his own creation. A soldier raised the hammer high and drove the nail through his hand, then the other, then through his feet, piercing flesh, wood, and the heart of heaven itself. The cross was lifted. It thudded into the ground, standing between earth and sky, a bridge of blood between God and man. Above his head, a sign was nailed, "Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews." The priest scoffed, the crowd laughed, but the heavens trembled at the truth they mocked. Below the cross, soldiers cast lots for his garments, unaware that prophecy itself was unfolding in their hands. The same hands that healed the blind now bled freely, open in surrender, open in love. Two criminals hung beside him. One hurled insults, the other whispered, "Lord, remember me." And Jesus, through the pain, replied, "Today you will be with me in paradise." Time seemed to stop. The sun, burning above, began to fade. Darkness spread across the land, a mourning veil drawn over creation. From the foot of the cross, Mary wept, and beside her stood John, the beloved disciple. Jesus looked upon them with tender strength. "Woman, behold your son. Son, behold your mother." The hours passed. The sky thundered. The earth groaned. The weight of sin, every betrayal, every cruelty, every tear, rested upon his shoulders. Then, in a final cry that split the silence of eternity, he said, "It is finished." The ground shook. The veil of the temple, the barrier between God and man, was torn in two. Graves cracked open, and the world itself seemed to exhale. At the foot of the cross, a Roman centurion whispered, "Truly, this was the Son of God." And as his head bowed, the storm began to break. He did not die defeated. He died victorious. The blood that fell to the earth would awaken the soul of mankind. The Lamb had been slain, and through his death, the door to eternity was opened. The storm had passed, but the world was not the same. The hill stood empty, save for 3 crosses silhouetted against a weeping sky. The crowd had gone home, their shouts and laughter now swallowed by guilt and fear. Only the whisper of the wind remained, carrying the echo of his final words. "It is finished." His body was taken down by trembling hands. Joseph of Arimathea, a man of quiet courage, and Nicodemus, who once came to him by night. Together they wrapped him in linen, anointing his wounds with myrrh and aloes, the fragrance of burial and devotion. They carried him through the fading light to a nearby garden, where a new tomb lay carved into the rock. There they placed the body of the Son of God. The stone was rolled into place, heavy, final, cold. And with that sound, stone meeting stone, the world fell silent. For the first time in eternity, heaven held its breath. The Word who spoke galaxies into being now lay still in the darkness he once conquered. The hands that formed mankind now bore the marks of redemption. The eyes that saw creation's dawn were closed beneath the weight of death. Outside the tomb, the city slept, but not in peace. The priests demanded guards, fearful that the prophecy might yet come true. "Seal the stone," they ordered. "Let no one move it." So the Romans set their watch, torches burning through the night, unaware that no army could hold what heaven had already destined to rise. In the silence of that garden, the universe waited between despair and deliverance. The powers of darkness rejoiced, thinking victory was theirs. But deep within the shadows of that sealed tomb, something eternal began to stir. The story was not over. It had only paused, like a breath before dawn, a heartbeat before resurrection. The lamb had been slain, but soon, the lion would awaken. The third day began like any other, but heaven had other plans. The sun rose over Jerusalem, casting golden light across the garden tomb. The stone, that immovable seal of death, was no longer in its place. The silence of the grave had been shattered. He had risen. The very breath that once spoke life into Adam now filled his own lungs again. The eyes that had closed in sorrow opened to behold victory. The heart that had stopped beat once more for all mankind. When Mary came to the tomb, she found it empty. Tears blurred her vision until she heard a familiar voice, "Mary," and in that single word, the universe changed forever. The cross was not defeat, it was the doorway. The tomb was not the end, it was the beginning. Through his death came life, through his silence came salvation, and through his wounds came healing for the world. The final hours had changed eternity. So when you look at the darkness in your own life, remember the dawn that broke the tomb, because the same light that rose in that garden still shines through every shadow today. Sparkles, subscribe to Echoes of the Fallen, and keep exploring the stories where heaven meets earth, and eternity whispers through time, because the mystery of the cross is that love never dies.